Let me know when you're ready.
Ready when you are.
Okay. All right, I'd like to call to order the Madison Public Schools Policy Committee. We have our committee member Galen on Zoom with us.
Yep, thank you. Hi.
Hi.
Hey, Galen. We'll go.
All right, so we're going to try to speed through the first part of the agenda. It shouldn't be too taxing. So we have policies proposed for rescission, and we want to recommend waiving the second reading after we go through them. So we'll go one by one. So the first policy is 5110.2 detention, and the Shipman Goodwin notes they are saying the policy is not mandatory, and they recommend that we repeal it. The process for detention may be regulated through an individual school procedure, and if we wish to maintain it, the policy then we need to revise it to remove provisions concerning recess because it conflicts with policy 5144 physical restraint and seclusion of students and use of exclusionary timeout as well as state law. So I just wanted to ask Dr. Cook, do we have a regulation or is it in any school handbooks regarding the use of detention? Because I know we have student discipline policy 5110.4, and it does not mention or include detention. It just talks about removal from class and disciplinary actions and suspension and expulsion.
Correct. Code of conduct in the student handbook addresses detention, and we're creative with that. There's lunch detentions, there's after school, there's Saturday. So,
Okay, so then there's no need for a board policy. So I would go along with Shipman Goodwin's recommendation for rescission. Any comments from Gail? Good.
I agree with you, Diane.
Okay, so I think it's pretty straightforward. We can recommend to waive the second reading on that one. It'll go forward to the board at the next meeting, not tonight. Then we have policy 5090.8.1.2 vehicle searches on school grounds. Shipman and Goodwin say it's not mandatory and they recommend repealing. If we wish to retain it, they recommend review to ensure legal compliance. I'm good with rescinding this particular policy. Is there any discussion, questions, or comments?
Does the administration feel like you have adequate authority to maintain discipline?
Yes.
In the parking lots?
Yeah, this one, more speaks to almost like registering your car and, then that might be something that happens. So I'm not sure what that was responding to at the time, but we do feel we have that ability.
So rescission is okay.
Yes.
Okay. So we'll recommend rescission and waiving second reading. Galen, you good with that?
Yeah, I recommend decision too. Thanks.
That was a yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. The next policy is, hold on 1 second. My page. 5090.2 student involvement in decision making. Shipman and Goodwin recommend rescission. It is unnecessary. If we want to retain it, we need to review it. Are there any comments regarding student involvement in decision making? It seems kind of like a pointless policy to me. I mean, I think our district already does this, sort of like embedded within its everything that we do within curriculum and with like everything, student activities, and I don't really see a need for this policy. It seems more like just a thing that the district does. Comments?
Yes, it was probably adopted at a time when it wasn't necessarily the course, and now education has, advanced to the point where, or evolved to the point where it's part of the educational process to involve kids. So,
Okay.
agreed.
Okay, if everyone's good with that, we'll move on.
I'm good. Let's move on.
Okay, 5090.2.1 student government. Shipman and Goodwin recommend repealing the policy because it's not necessary. We feel the topic is better suited for school regulations or a student handbook. And so I would like to know, is anything written about student government in student handbooks, or is there regulation on it? I mean, I know that we have student government.
No, I think it's more through the student clubs and activities that happen at the high school. But I don't believe there's anything in the regs or handbook that would speak to it, but I don't think there would need to be.
I don't think we really need a policy on it because it's handled, you know, at the school level.
Right.
All right, so I'm good with rescinding this one as well. Galen?
Ditto.
Okay. We're moving on to policy 5090.2.2, student advisory councils. Again, this is, I don't know, do we have a superintendent student advisory council?
No,
So then this is pointless. We will rescind this one. You good with that, Galen? I'm assuming you are.
Yeah, sorry, I'm
Okay.
cutting in and out because I'm driving, but yes, I'm good.
Yes, I
with
know,
it.
I'm sorry. How about if you don't say anything, I'll take it as you agree with me and then you can yell if you do.
All right,
Okay.
fair
Okay.
enough, silence is consent.
Okay.
But except for when, except if we're gonna vote on them
Yeah,
at
vote.
the end of this section,
Yeah.
we need his verbal, yeah.
We'll do a whole encompassing vote of all the policies at the end for the rescission one, and then we'll move on to the review.
Perfect.
So we're at 5090.4 student publications. Chipman and Goodwin say it's not necessary, they recommend repealing. If we wish to retain the policy, they recommend internal review because it's old and legal review because it references the First Amendment. So I'm not even aware that we have any student publications.
We do.
We do?
Yeah, there's a
Okay.
student paper at the high school.
Is there? Okay, so is that a club then?
It's there's a teacher advisory, yes, it would be basically a club activity that students can join.
Okay. So that to me, again, sounds like something that, and the yearbook, I think is, we hire it out, that's not even. Is it run by students or
There's a-
it can involve more? But they don't know. Okay.
Yes.
So again, I think this is something that doesn't really need a policy, it's just, it's a part of an activity or club in school. All right, so,
Right, and if there ever wasn't student interest, but it could, die out for some time before it came back,
Right,
potentially,
right.
if there was, they couldn't find an advisor, that's.
right,
Yeah,
and I know that that's typically the procedure they go through. If there's an interest in forming a new club, they ask a teacher to be an advisor, they ask, for permission to have the club, and then they have it.
Yeah, at one point there was a literary publication with, poetry and short stories and stuff in it. And stuff like that comes and goes, but I don't see any need to have a policy about it.
Yeah, it just seems kind of pointless. All right, moving on 5090.4.1 underground publications. This is not necessary and Shipman and Goodwin recommend repealing. Again, they recommend legal review if we wish to keep it to make sure that we are in compliance with the First Amendment. I think this is the same thing as the last one. It's not necessary. I mean, unless there's something that you would like to.
No, I think, no, I agree with you.
I think, it's pretty straightforward. The students know what to do with the schools. If they want to like have a petition or something, like they go and they get permission from the principal, I think they all, it's well established what they do and we don't need a policy on that.
The only thing I'm worried about when you look at it again. Let me just real quick skim this.
Because I do know that like if anyone had advertising that they wanted to put up for like an event, I know that they get permission from the administration of the school. And I don't know if that's referenced in a handbook or. I'm not sure how they know to do that, but I know that they know to do that. And so I don't know if we need a policy on that at the board level, if that's something that is a policy within each school, like.
Right, I mean, even that would take care of that, but like the playbill, for the play, it was at the play,
Right.
and they, passed those out, and it was very professionally done. They had lots of,
But that's a school sponsored event.
right. Yeah, just wondering the process that they go through to get the, get the sponsorship,
I'll tell you what I'm concerned about. And I'm not advocating that we have a policy or that it say this. My concern is, I know that districts kind of get caught up at times, all the way up to the Supreme Court of the United States, in controversies over a kid wearing a T-shirt that says the wrong thing
Dress code,
or has a beer, dress code.
we have a dress code policy that covers it, that's what I'm saying.
Well, all right, well, that's what I'm gonna say, that's dress code, but what about for other forms of speech? You know, like if a kid writes a poem for an English class and it's got a bunch of 4-letter words in it. You know what I mean? Like, do you feel as the superintendent, like there are avenues for addressing those things that are appropriate to maintain the educational environment, which is what this policy is aimed at, while not otherwise trampling on First Amendment rights?
Are you on the next one? Are we still, we're still
still on-
on, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
No, this is freedom of expression. 5090.4.2.
but we're not there yet.
Oh,
We're talking about 59.4.1 underground publication.
okay, well,
Just
which-
because
yeah, I'm
and
sorry.
under line 8, it talks about distributing non-school sponsored materials. That's what we were talking about, because you were talking about the school play bill, but that's a school
Right,
sponsored event.
yes,
So I was trying to think of something, what would be, you know, I can't really think of anything, because almost everything is school sponsored. It's a club, it's an activity, it's a. And
It would be, and maybe it was, there was something in '96 or before that they were addressing in that, they were concerned about students starting their own newspaper that they were playing, you know, without a teacher advisor.
Well, I mean, this was before social media.
Yeah.
right, and that's covered under.
BSN.
We'll get to later.
Well,
Take this.
so, you know, this is the way the kids express their angst was sometimes they would have. So this was a problem back then. At some schools, so they probably adopted it because they needed it
Yeah,
at the time. Now people just moan and groan on social media.
Yeah, they're not going to Staples to get something to print
you're
out.
not handwriting.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think we can just go ahead and rescind this one because that stuff will be covered under a different policy. All right, so we'll move on from that one. So now we're at policy 5090.4.2, freedom of speech / written and oral expression.
Do you remember what I just said about all that?
Yes, so. Shipman and Goodwin say about this, the policy is not necessary and they recommend repealing it. If we want to retain it, they recommend internal review as well as legal review to ensure compliance with the First Amendment. So, I don't know that we need this policy, but I guess I would ask, do we have anything about this type of student conduct in handbooks at the different building levels, school levels? Do we have a regulation on it?
It would be everywhere because, like you said, it's dress code.
Right, I
It's-
think it's embedded into the other policies.
Yeah.
You know, it's in the harassment ones, the, you know, all that. School
So-
bullying.
I mean, do you feel like you have enough? The problem is, you know, these things blow up in your face when you encounter a situation and there's no policy underneath you to point the parent to. You know what I mean? Now, if it's in the code of conduct and whatever, then that's fine. On the other hand, I can see Shipman and Goodwin's concern over this because this is one of those you break it, you audit situations where if we adopt or uphold a policy, then that policy better comply with the First Amendment.
Right.
And we're exposing ourselves to liability for,
And that's why I lean towards rescinding this. I think enough of the other stuff about, you know, written or oral expression shall not contain libelous or obscene content, like that is embedded into some other policies that we have.
I mean, I can just see though, like if someone gets in trouble for, again, doing a poem that some of us would find off color.
Well, if it's written on a computer, that's covered under a different policy.
Well, yeah, no, but I mean, the question is that artistic expression and to what extent, and you know, if you give the kid detention or suspension because it's, you know, got a bunch of 4-letter words in it, then or describes, you know, graphic content or whatever, you know, the parent might come back and say, how come you suspended Junior? You know, it's First Amendment, and I don't see any policy that specifically says he can't speak his mind in his homework assignments.
But I think actually it is covered in another policy that we're looking at the end of the.
Which one? Because.
Say, Diane,
Yes.
technology.
how about if I or somebody else were to go through the policies and compile a list of situations. So instead of just speculating, well, we think that it's covered into this or that, maybe just a simple list of would suffice to see if we have enough coverage.
I don't know what you mean.
Well, go through the policy and say, all right, here's a dress code. Here's something that pertains to dress code. Here's something that pertains to computer. Here's something that pertains to whatever. So if we feel we have enough situations covered that we don't need an umbrella policy like freedom of speech / written or expression. Just thinking out loud.
I just feel like this particular policy is. I think it's troublesome to keep it. You know, I think if someone is gonna make a claim of First Amendment speech about something to do in school, it's gonna be. I don't think it'll matter if we have a policy on it, because they're gonna go straight to First Amendment and legal. You know what I'm saying? Like.
Yeah, but we have a lot of stuff in our policies that abrogate the First Amendment already. You know, like, you know, kids aren't allowed to, I don't know. Like you said, like, you know, if we have a dress code that someone can't, I mean, one could even argue, for example, that I have a right to wear a mini skirt because it's my expression of my bodily, you know, image or whatever. You know what I mean? Speech isn't only verbal speech, it's anything you do.
So that would be dress code and then disruption to the school environment, you know,
Right.
so that's a piece where, you know, the shirt doesn't necessarily need to be offensive to me. If it causes a disruption to the school environment, you know, there are.
And that's really the question is the standard disruption of the school environment? Can we use that in every situation? And if we can, maybe we feel we have enough coverage. If it won't, if it won't go to convincingly to every situation, and it's gonna leave our administration in hot water because it becomes you know, on Wednesday I approve it, on Thursday I don't, or, you know, this girl wore a halter top and she didn't get in trouble, and the other girl wore one and she got in trouble. You know, it becomes, it also exposes us.
All right, so why don't we put this one aside and we'll talk to Shipman and Goodwin and see,
Yeah.
you
Maybe
know.
they have a recommended version instead of just repealing this, or
Or
maybe
see
they
if
don't want
we
to touch
can
it with
find,
textbook ball.
and maybe see if we can find,
We can review.
review it and see if it, where else it falls, because if it's covered by enough other policies, then there's no reason to have yet another policy.
Yeah,
So we will,
especially when
set it
it
aside.
exposes us a bit, but
All right, that sound good to you, Galen?
thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, it just, I think it pays that a little.
Yeah, I mean, I put a little question mark next to it when I was reading it, because I'm like, yeah, like, because you kind of want to keep some of the
Yeah,
restrictions so that there's guidance, but I don't know, you know, if it's too much, if it's just being repetitive or,
yeah,
all right, so we're gonna set that one aside. All right, so the last policy we have proposed for rescission is 5100.2 school sponsored events. And Shipman and Goodwin, this is a really short policy, says not mandatory, they recommend repealing it. They say the policy addresses procedural requirements more appropriate for school regulations. If we wish to maintain the policy, they recommend internal review to ensure that it's being implemented as written. And so the policy is very short. All school sponsored events will be under the control and supervision of school personnel. Approval for an event will be secured from the principal building involved, and the event will be placed on the school calendar before any public announcement is made. So Dr. Cook, what's your thoughts on this one? I think
Yeah, so we have procedures on how
school events are done.
events are.
Is that, is it like an actual regulation, or is it like?
No, it's just a
that's-
procedure that you go through the
Procedure.
principal for the school.
So, and the
That's something.
procedure varies by school.
sorry, I'm just texting with our fellow board member to see if,
She's coming.
yes, she'll also be on for the 7:30 meeting. She's on now,
Oh,
but
is she?
she'll also be.
Oh, there she is. I'm worried. She's done, okay.
Hi there. Sorry, I was having some technical difficulties.
All right, thanks for coming. All right, so, school sponsored events, I'm good with rescinding this. If, Maureen Galen, you good with that?
Yes,
All right, so let's
Yes,
just,
I am as well.
let's make a motion now then. So we are looking at policies, for rescission and waiving the second reading for policies 5110.2 detention, 5090.8.1.2 vehicle searches on school grounds, 5090.2 student involvement decision making, 5090.2.1 student government, 5090.2.2 student advisory councils, 5090.4 student publications, 5090.4.1 underground publications, and 5110.2 school sponsored events. I need a motion.
second.
Thank you. A
I'm-
second? Oh, Galen, second. Galen seconded. Who made the motion? I missed it. I think he said it.
doesn't matter to me. Maureen, you want a motion? I'll second.
I'm sorry, it broke up. I didn't hear you, Diane. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
so the policies that are proposed for rescission, all of them except for 5090.4.2, we are recommending rescission and waiving the second reading to move it out to the board. And so I just need a motion and a second. So someone,
So moved.
so thank you,
I'll
Maureen.
second.
And then all in favor, aye.
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 Thank you. Aye. I say aye. I say aye.
No,
Okay.
you did now.
Okay, so that's 3-0 approved. Okay, so now we're gonna go on to policies for review. This I expect to take a little bit longer. So we're starting with policy 9220.3 board member resignation. And so I just wanted to, this is a little complicated, so I'm just gonna kind of walk us through it. So if you look at the bylaw that says in the upper left-hand corner, repeal and replace with 9220.5, this is actually the current policy, 9220.3 board member resignation. It's got board member resignation in the top and then resignation of board member from an executive board position on the bottom. So before we go through that one, I would have you look at 9220.3 filling vacancies on the board, which was Shipman and Goodwin's first revision of this policy, and it says board member resignation and vacancies. And then we will also look at 9220.5, which is unexpired term fulfillment vacancies, which is the current policy. Because if we look at the first revision of Shipman and Goodwin, we would end up rescinding the 9220.5 because it falls under vacancies in the first version of the 9220.3.
So it consolidates
Yes.
both circumstances.
However,
into one.
Then Shipman and Goodwin came back with a new 9220.5 about filling vacancies on the board. But we discussed this at the last meeting, I think the last one or the one before that. And the original 9220.5 says just that the vacancies on the Board of Ed will be filled in accordance with Connecticut General Statutes and the Madison Town Charter and the Board of Ed bylaws. So Shipman and Goodwin came up with this version which aligns with theirs. However, we decided already that because it does not align with our town charter, that this does not work for us. So the second S&G version of 9220.5 we are not using. So then if we look at
That's the
their,
one with lines 5 and 6 crossed out at the top.
yes.
Okay, so that's going on.
So we are looking then at the other one. So our current policy of 9220.3, the current policy 9220.5, and the revised 9220.3. So my thoughts on this are that I like their first revision. Line 14 needs the word "the" between receipt of and written resignation, receipt of the written resignation. But besides that, I like that it consolidated the board member resignation and vacancies. However, the current policy of 9220.3 board member resignation talks about resigning from an executive board position, and that is completely left out of this. And so I think if we want to keep a policy regarding the resignation of a board member from the executive board position, but not from the board itself, then we might want to reword this and keep it in somehow because it's not mentioned anywhere else. And then the old 9220.5 unexpired term fulfillment and vacancies we looked at before and said we didn't want to change it because it just says that it's filled in accordance with the Connecticut General Statutes and the Madison Town Charter and Board of Ed bylaws. So Oh, so no, so we would repeal 9220.5 because it's in the new 9220.3. But the new 9220.3 does not include the resignation of board member from the executive board position. So we have 2 executive board members. Yes,
If I just make comments.
yes,
Shipman and Goodwin's model policy called board officers, which you guys will get to later in the 9,000 series, does address resignations from the executive committee.
thank
So
you.
that we will get to the 9,000, they're very difficult to do piece by piece because they all are so interconnected, and that is the pairing policy for that one, which we can certainly put on the next agenda and hold this if you want to wait, or take my word for it, you know, whatever you're comfortable with.
So we just haven't gotten to reviewing that one yet. All right, so
Correct.
then I think that we can talk about it and not make a decision and then bring that other policy forward to make sure that the revisions are how we want it to be so that we don't rescind a policy and not have a policy before we accept the new one. Is everyone with me? Galen and Maureen?
Yes, I agree with that. Thank you, Diane.
Okay,
Yes, I missed my last 2 exits trying to follow it, but yes, I think I'm on
Okay.
board with it.
so this one is going to be tabled yet again.
So
Yes.
just in general though.
Yes.
On general principle, first of all, as to line 14, you don't have to add the word the
No,
following receipt of written resignation. Yeah, that's, you're technically correct. And then,
but before that, they call it the resignation.
yeah, but they're saying more generically in this usage, following the receipt of any resignation, basically. Of any such resignation.
Well, I like that.
Regardless, if you add that, that's not the hill I'm
Right,
to die on, but in general, I like this shorter, newer version.
yeah, me too.
So I think it might make sense to just agree in principle maybe this evening that this is
Well-
the one we'll work from going
Oh, yeah.
forward.
Yeah,
And
we
then
just can't
take a
vote
look to
formally.
see, yeah, before any vote is taken.
Right, because I don't want to get rid of the policy regarding resignation for an executive.
Exactly, unless
Right.
and until we get.
So
that.
we won't need to discuss it as much.
Yeah.
We just need to look at the other policy that talks about the resignation from an executive position. So everyone is good with that. We will set that aside and it will not go anywhere today. All right, so then, we will look at policy 9220.4. Removal of board officers, formerly board member removal from office. So you should have just one copy of this because it is, the revisions are shown. And my feeling about this particular policy is that I would like to make it the 2/3 vote and not the majority in every instance. So we're looking at line 26, where it says by a majority or 2/3 vote, I would like the 2/3 vote. And then if you look, on line,
Majority or.
I don't know,
That was just me adding it in, so you
Oh.
had both.
oh, because we had talked about it.
Yes,
before.
you just pick one and then I'll delete the other.
Oh, great. So then line 56, again, it says by majority or 2/3 vote, and so I want 2/3 vote. And then if you look actually later on line 69, it says majority, but I would like that to be 2/3. Otherwise, I'm good with everything else. So now I go to Maureen. Thoughts?
I think we talked about this before and my preference was to keep it with the majority.
Okay. Galen? Galen? I think he's having difficulty.
Is that a rest stop?
So. Let's put this aside till he comes back. I think he's having a little technical difficulty. Did you want to say something about it first, Doug, before we move on? And
I
then-
mean, I favor majority, it's hard. It's hard to get a 2/3 vote for anything. That's controversial, and removal of an officer will always be controversial by the very nature of it. And I know from a lot of experience on this board that there are times when someone should be removed. And a majority of the members believe it, but, you know, people lobby and they get their buddy to vote with them, and then,
But that's politics.
Well, it is, but, you know, do we want the politics to override the students? And what's in the best interest of the board and therefore the students, or do we want, you know, what's in the best interest of the board to be
But I
governed
think-
by the
I
majority?
think the safeguard in any policy that talks about a 2/3 vote is specifically to make sure that you don't have a simple majority causing disruption, or it's something like this, that removal from an office is a serious thing, and I think it should be more serious than a simple majority. I think it should be 2/3.
Yeah, but then you have you can argue it both ways,
Right.
because if you require 2/3, then you can have the tyranny of the minority. Right, so,
So right now, it reads 2/3 vote of the entire board.
so everyone will need to be present, it's not like a quorum situation.
However, under line 56, it says 2/3 vote of those board members present and voting.
It's inconsistent with it.
Yeah. So I think it needs to be, because this is, an officer of the board may be removed for cause by, if we say 2/3 vote of the entire board, line 26 and 27. Then it talks about the cause, and then the procedures for removal. Line 56. So that's reasonable written notice. Blah, 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 for removal of the officer from office with such notice to be provided after being authorized by 2/3 vote of those board members present and voting. And then if you go down to line 69, that number 3, any action to remove or take other disciplinary action regarding a board officer or cause following such informal hearing shall require an affirmative vote by majority or 2/3 member of the board. So I would like these all to be consistent. Again, I would like 2/3, but we can discuss 2/3 of those present or 2/3 of the entire board. Because I think that might be our negotiating area. So Galen, are you there?
Yes, I'm having some technical difficulties, but I got the last part of it. Yeah.
Okay, so what is your feeling about majority versus 2/3 and 2/3 vote of those present versus 2/3 vote of the entire board? And go. Galen? All right, hold that thought,
No.
Galen. Maureen, how
No,
about you?
I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Galen, go.
I'm sorry. Could you repeat the question there? Sorry, Diane.
Yeah, so we're talking about whether removing an officer of the board should be done by a simple majority of those present. A 2/3 vote of the entire board, or a 2/3 vote of those present.
I would favor a 2/3 vote of the entire board.
Okay. And I would like them all consistent between those 3 different places within the policy.
My preference, as I
Yes.
said before, would be the majority, and I think they should be consistent as well.
Okay, so let's vote on it.
Well, okay, and well, then you have the question. If you have difficulty one of the problems could be that board member is never showing up to meetings, and then,
No,
They
that's
can-
covered by a different policy.
but they can avoid getting. Yeah, but that policy refers then to that, or would require this, and then in order to get kicked
No,
out of their
That's
position.
covered by town charter. The town charter says that if you fail, you miss 4 meetings in a row, you've considered to have given up your position. And so
And
that
that
supersedes us.
All right, but they could still, for a month and a half, hold up the proceedings by not showing up, or
Not concerned.
But they would you would think they'd vote for themselves.
yeah, but they can avoid there being an entire board, and then.
We could still have 6, you could still have 6 vote to remove.
No, if you can, if it's 2/3 of the members present. But if it's 2/3 of the entire board, then they can avoid getting removed by just never showing up.
No, it's
No.
still 6. You could have 6 people, you could have only 6 people show up and they could vote to remove the person who's not there.
In a case where you're relying on quorum, but where it says vote of the entire board, that means the entire board needs to be present. It's not a quorum situation. That's
So
the
you're
person
saying,
paying.
so you're saying that outdoors, that the person who does not want to be removed, that is up for possibly being removed, would just simply not go to the meetings.
And therefore a vote could not be taken, or at least the vote couldn't pass either way, because the entire board is not there to render a 2/3 of the entire board.
I don't know.
No, a 2/3 vote is 6 people. It's not, it doesn't say anywhere that the whole board has to be present.
It does in one line, but not in the other two.
It
So
says
that-
2/3 vote of
Of the entire-
members being present, that I would argue against. Typically bylaws, I try and stay out of because that's how the board operates. But a 2/3 vote of the board is 6 people. Regardless,
Whether they're,
whether there's 9
There
there
or
or
not.
6 there, yeah.
okay, so in other words, they're saying you can't have it go by fewer than 6. If you don't have the whole board there, you still would need 6.
Still would need 6, yes, so 5 people showed up, you're not gonna,
So, okay, so you can have the vote.
Yes.
And it could even. You could
All
even
members
take
don't need
action
to be present.
based on 6 votes.
Right, their
Being
their
cast.
lack of being there is like a vote,
Yeah.
Yeah.
for.
so,
It's like an abstention
yes.
in essence.
Yeah,
I just wanted to point out a clarification, the
Yes.
parts are going back and forth on line 56. That's not actually them voting to remove the officer from the board, that is them voting to authorize action to take that vote at the next meeting. That's why they're giving you a smaller number, you just need a majority of those present, which would help you in a situation where if you had a board member who's never showing up.
Ah, good one.
Thank you.
So
So
you
that's
paid the
why,
big bucks.
what?
That's why you paid the big bucks.
I know, right? So that is why it is different on that line from the other two. They're
Yes.
making it so that you don't end up in that situation where if you have someone who's decided not to show up for 3 meetings in a row, you have the ability to take that action without needing them present to guarantee you 2/3 or a majority of a full board.
so it would be line 69, we would have to change to 2/3. But line 56, we get rid of the board 2/3 and keep that majority. Right?
That
Well,
would
no,
be-
they're
you
saying
could still,
2/3 vote, it's, you still have to decide between majority and 2/3, but it's saying the 2/3 vote is of the members present and voting. Not of the entire board,
Yeah, and this is only a vote
to authorize
in-
the,
intent to remove.
right,
to
the
be
written
voted on the
notice.
next.
This is authorizing the written
Yes.
notice. To be provided
Yeah,
about removing the officer.
so that could be at a lower standard. We could make it 2/3 also, but. You know, you can make it a majority just to get it heard. And then the next meeting it's heard and you need a 2/3 vote to make it happen. You need at least 6 people.
Galen, thoughts?
I think it should be a high threshold of 2/3 of the entire board, not of those present.
For everything? For written
For
notice?
everything.
Okay, for everything. Maureen?
I feel like it should be the majority of those present for everything.
Okay,
And that's how we do all of our other voting, isn't it?
right, but this is bylaws and it's about removing a board officer, so. It's meant to be more difficult.
Right. I mean, I can't imagine we'll be in a situation where we would need that, but I think that the majority is the way to go.
I guess I'm tiebreaker,
I don't technically have a vote.
you don't. So it's 2/3. So it's
Yeah.
gonna be line 26, 2/3 vote of the entire board. And line 56 is gonna be 2/3 vote. Galen, are you good with that one about written notice being just 2/3 vote of the board members present?
Yeah, I could relax that threshold for
Okay.
just a written
we'll go with
notice,
that.
sure.
And then line 69 says any action to remove or take other disciplinary action regarding a board officer for cause following the informal hearing shall require an affirmative vote by a majority of all members of the board. And so I would like that to be 2/3 as well to keep it consistent, and it will remain 2/3 all members of the board.
Again, my preference would be majority, but I understand that I'm outnumbered.
So what will happen is we'll move it forward. And it'll take 2 reads and then it'll be discussed at the board level.
Yeah, you should do an official vote right now.
Let's
to
vote.
Lock in on that.
Okay, so
And then, yeah.
we're voting on the revisions as made, including the 2/3 vote, line 26. For the entire board, 2/3 vote for those members present, line 56, 57, and 2/3 vote, 69, line 69, for all members of the board. I need a motion, Galen, you'll do the motion.
So moved. Yeah,
I'll
so moved.
second, and let's vote. Maureen, you're a no, Galen, you're a yes, I'm a yes, correct?
Yes,
Correct, yeah.
And we'll move forward to the full board. Next. All right, we are at policy 4150. You should have a copy of the current policy. This is acceptable use of computer equipment and related systems, software, and networks. This is under personnel, the 4000 series. Then you have a revised version. And so actually I have some comments on this, so I get to go first. I'm chair. So we have a regulation. You should have a copy of the regulation 4150, employee use of district's computer systems. And then you have the personnel policy 4150, employee use of the district's computer systems, formerly acceptable use of computer equipment and related systems, software, and networks. So in the revised version, I don't know if anyone else noticed, but the very first paragraph there is nearly identical. And so I just wanted to ask Dr. Cook, since he does the regulations, is there a reason that it's not like exactly identical? And I will tell you exactly what I'm looking at. So if you look at policy 4150 and you look at line 14, it starts with phones and then it says copiers, smartphones, work phones. But if you look at your regulation at line 12, everything is like exactly the same except for it says computing devices, cellular computing, personal computing devices, that's the same. And then this says cellular phones, smartphones. The personnel, the policy 4150 says copiers, but copiers is not included in the regulation. And then it says smartphones, work phones, and work phone is in the policy, but not in the regulation. And then everything else is identical. Except, okay, so you can comment on that and then we'll go down.
So you're missing
Copiers and work phones.
copiers and work.
And I just didn't know if that was just an oversight or you want them to be different or you want them to be the same.
I would want them to be the same.
All right, so we would just need to add in line 12 after cellular phones, add copiers into the regulation. And then it says smartphones, and then after smartphones, you would add work phones in the regulation. And then everything else is the same until you come down to, in the policy is line 19, and in the regulation is line 18. And so if you look at the regulation, it says line 18, removal of content such as Snapchat and security focused platforms such as Signal. And then the policy, it says the same thing, but it leaves out such as Snapchat and such as Signal. So do you want them the same or?
Same with it, yes.
Okay, so in the policy, then we need to add after removal of content such as Snapchat and after focused platforms such as Signal, and then they will be the same. And then if you go down to line 21 in the regulation, it says messaging systems are referred to collectively as the computer systems and are provided in order electronic devices. I think electronic devices is accidentally inserted there. It should be in order to enhance, just like the line 22 in the policy. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
What line are you looking at?
So line 21 in the regulation, I think the term electronic devices should just be removed. I think it was an error. And then it reads the same. The board's computers, computer networks, electronic devices, internet access, and electronic messaging systems are referred to collectively as the computer systems and are provided in order to enhance the educational and business operations of the district.
Yeah.
And then it reads exactly the same as in the policy. So I think that was just a typo. And then if you go down to line 25 in both, this should be identical. These computer systems are business and educational tools. As such, they are, remove the word being in the in the regulation. As such, they are made available to, and this is where I wasn't sure why it is different. In the regulation, it says available to employees of the district. But in the policy, it says available to board employees, and then it says for business and education related uses, whereas the other one says for district related educational business purposes. So it's like, you know, choose what you want
Okay.
in the
I
regulation.
think we should have district related education.
Yeah, that's what I like in the policy.
And business.
So,
So take the reg and put that.
yeah, whatever is in the reg
Yep.
part, just put it in the policy. And then,
Yeah, that's all we go too fast.
I got it.
Okay, great.
I think that's all I had for the policy. Are you guys following along? You're all good with that? There was just some,
Yes, it makes sense
Yes.
to be consistent.
okay. And then, so then my other question is about the regulation, in line, starting at line 173. And this is about, prohibited uses in the regulation for personnel. And so it talks about using social networking sites. So it says this is under prohibited uses. Inappropriate use of district computer systems is expressly prohibited, including but not limited to the following. Oh, so I must have misread that. I don't have a question. I'm good. Sorry, my bad.
Is inappropriate use defined?
It is, I think it's earlier, it's defined. It has, to if it's not district related, if it's not, school related, educational, business purposes. Let's see.
Yeah.
Right.
All users of computer
Yeah.
systems must restrict themselves to appropriate district.
All right. So with those changes, it's just to make them consistent with each other. I think I'm good with the revision. If there's anything else that anyone wanted to comment on, otherwise I think we could go ahead and move this forward to the board with those revisions made. Are you good, Zoe?
Yep.
Okay. It will be obviously a 2-read, because it's a lot, and the regulation is not something that we vote on anyway. It will go forward for an FYI and to read it along with the policy. So policy 4150, acceptable use of computer equipment, related systems, software, and networks. This is the personnel and the associated regulations. Are we good with moving that forward, guys?
Yes,
Yes, I agree.
Okay. That's an informal vote. All right. And now we are at 5210. Time is it? Oh, good, we're still good. Policy 5210, acceptable use of computer equipment and related systems, software, networks. Oh, by the way, I did forget to even look at what Shipping and Goodwin said.
It's for students.
Yeah, so.
Did you? What happened to 4150 for personnel? Because that's different than,
We were just talking about 4150. The 4150 under personnel, personnel is a 4000 series. We're just talking about the regulation and the policy together.
yeah. But the. Oh, yeah, okay.
Good? Okay.
Sorry,
That's all right.
I forgot to move this one in my spent pile.
All right, I did that. All right, so I'm sorry, we're talking about 5210 acceptable use of computer equipment and related systems, software, and networks. So the 5000 series is the student. Give me 1 second to get organized. So we have a page of the current policy, and then we have the revised policy, and then we have the regulation. And so Shipman and Goodwin say,
Patient. Got cut off, no recommendations,
So I'm gonna.
there's another page.
so just the title.
Shipman and Goodwin recommend that the board repeal this policy and replace it with the Shipman and Goodwin model policy, acceptable use, consistency, and updated content. And this policy was reviewed by the Director of Administrative Services, as was the last one we talked about. So my question regarding the 5210 series, which I guess is for everyone, is so it's the same, one of the same things I found in the last one is that in the revised 5210 policy, line 17, and 18. Again, this, if you look at the regulation and the policy side by side, they are verbatim the same. And it's the same change in the regulation about the Snapchat and the signal. So I'm looking at lines 17 and 18 in the policy. And I'm wondering if you wanted that in there or not. So, because it literally reads the same as the last policy about electronic messaging systems, including blah, 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 blah. And then it says, and products that have the ability to create duration-based or subjective removal of content. And in the last policy and regulation it said such as Snapchat, but it's left out here, and I didn't know if that was intentional or not. Like if it should be there because it's in the, even though this is the student policy, that was under the personnel policy, but it's verbatim the same.
Okay, I would include it then.
Okay,
Yeah.
so then line 17, after subjective removal of content, add in such as Snapchat.
Yeah.
And then and security focused platforms, and line 18, such as Signal.
Yeah.
And then that will read the same as the personnel. Got that, Zoe? Okay, thank you. And then I had a question in the next paragraph down, and so I'm looking first at line 25. I felt like the term by the administration is redundant because the line starts at the line above. The administration shall develop regulations setting forth procedures to be used by the administration in an effort to ensure that some computer systems are used by students solely for education related purposes. It just seemed kind of like odd to me to say that the administration is making a procedure for the administration.
Well,
I mean, I get
now it
why
does
it's saying-
specify, because you get, the administration can develop regulations governing the students, or it can develop regulations governing the administration. In this case, it's specifically saying we'll develop regulations setting forth the procedures that we, the administration, will follow to make sure that the systems are used.
Okay, and then so when I was reading, I see what you're saying, so I'm okay with keeping it in. But I don't know, if anyone else wants to weigh in on that, keep it in, remove it.
I'm fine with keeping it in.
Okay. Galen, you good with that?
Yeah, I'm good with keeping it in, thanks.
Okay, so my question regarding this is that if you read the regulation on the second page, it talks about definitions. It defines obscene as to minors, harmful to minors, the definition for prohibited sexual acts, blah, 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 right? So the definitions are all in the regulation, but if you read the policy, so I'm looking at specifically lines 26, 27, it says the board will educate minor students about appropriate online behavior. So that I read the policy before I read the regulation, and that sort of stood out to me because we're educating all the students, not just the ones that are under 18. And so I kind of question the use of the word minor there, but I don't know if it's there for the legal term because it's legally defined in the regulation.
Well, I think that is one of the ways that you get around the First Amendment. Because that establishes a legal standard, quote unquote, harmful to minors. That there's legal and statutory authority to abrogate the First Amendment.
But then is it saying that it only applies to minor students?
No, because if someone, even if someone's 18 years old and they get caught with that stuff on their phone in school, they're still
Right,
potentially being.
and that's my point. So why don't we just say students and not minor students? We're gonna educate all the students about appropriate online behavior, including interacting with other individuals, blah, blah, blah. And then on the last line 32, again, it states it to ensure that such filtering technology is operative during computer use by minor students to the extent practicable when such students are using board-owned computers. I just feel like the term minor, I know it's a legal thing there, but I feel like it shouldn't be there because it doesn't matter if your student is 18 or 16 or 14, they're all gonna be educated the same and they're all held to the same standards.
But the legal standard that gets you around the First Amendment and allows you to
Has
implement
to say minor.
discipline, that legal standard is that it's dangerous to minors. So whether you're a minor or an 18 or a 38-year-old doing it,
Oh, I see.
if it's harmful to minors, we're allowed to move against you, even against a claim in self-defense that, well, it's First Amendment, I can have this if I want it.
Okay, I mean, we can double check that with Shipman Goodwin. But I think they must have put it in there for a reason.
I think so, but we can check with them, yeah.
All right, so why don't we, if you guys are good with that, like I'm talking to no one.
I know, sorry.
Where are you? If you guys are okay with that, we will ask Shipman and Goodwin about that and, you know, if they say like, oh, we need to keep it in, we'll keep it in.
Right.
If not, do we want to say that we take it out or do we just leave it?
I think they're gonna say keep it in, we can report back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I look forward to what they have to say. I imagine they're gonna say to keep it.
I
And so
think
then
Seth's
if it's to keep it
I
the same, then can we just say that we're gonna move it on past the committee to the board for 2 reads? Are we good with that?
Yes, that's fine.
yes, yeah, I think Seth's reasoning, by the way, is very cogent here, so. Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay, thank you. So we've got 4 minutes to finish here. And we're the last one. 5090.9, use of private technological devices by students. So we have just one copy, it's the revised copy, and Shipman and Goodwin recommend that the policy be revised for legal compliance and consistency. These revisions have been reviewed by the Director of Administrative Services. We did last revise it in 2022, so these are small revisions that Shipman recommends to keep the policy current. So one of the things that I found in it that I questioned was at the bottom of the first page where all those lines are crossed out, starting in line 27 going down. I questioned removing the image capture and recording and sound recording and Kindles and Nooks. Because I feel like those are still relevant, I guess is the word I'm looking for. Because if you go to the second page under line 60, it says using such device to violate any school rule, including the unauthorized recording, photographic, video, or audio of another individual without the permission of the individual or school staff member. So I feel like, why wouldn't we keep in the image capture and recording and sound recording if we're also going to reference it later? Because it doesn't necessarily have to be by phone. Because they list again above the privately owned devices as privately, and I don't know why you would have a privately owned desktop computer in the school, but I would like to know how they got it there. But personal
Well, it's
computing,
lighter than the book bag.
right?
Yeah.
Personal computing devices, cellular phones, smartphones, network access devices, radios, personal audio players, remove the CD players, tablets, walkie-talkies, and personal gaming systems, Bluetooth speakers, personal data assistants, and other electronic signaling devices. So I know that there are still some students that do read on Kindle because of like you are in a situation where you're not allowed to have your phone out for a test, but then you have extra time at the end and they're allowed to read, you know, a school related book.
I think in this case and they did it in a previous policy, they were kind of getting away from the name brand and stuff. Like that, they're also
So is that-
considered tablets, but
A Kindle and another considered tablets.
So
I would say so.
they also said, and other electronic signaling devices, and by using that and genericizing it,
It's
you-
like
it's
everything.
gonna stay better for longer because you're not mentioning different specific.
But I think image capture,
Types of
recording, and sound
devices that
recording
go.
is all pretty generic. Or maybe it's just too wordy, verbose.
I think with the revisions, it captures all, feel that that was all included in that. I mean, the only thing maybe we'd want to say is refers to but not limited to. I mean, we could say that to make sure you're completely covered. Privately owned technological devices refers to but is not limited to, and then say, list all those so that we're
Is
completely
that like a
covered.
legal thing, do you think? That is,
No, it's just, it genericizes the definition so that you don't have to be here every year updating this.
well, do you think if we do what Maureen says, and say refers to but not limited to?
Oh,
Good.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all right, so why don't we add in line 23 after refers to, but is not limited to?
Yeah, because I think that covers us, and I'm with Dr. Cook. We shouldn't be listing name brands, and that's what Kindle and Nook is.
All right, and then And that's all I have for that. Does anyone have any other comments, questions, problems with policy 5090.9?
No, I think it looks good. Thank you.
Yeah, same, no other problems.
Okay, so let's, with that one revision, we will move this forward to the board for 2 reads. All good?
Wait.
What?
I'm just looking at this. We may have an opportunity here to cure a perennial problem. If you look at the second page, line 58, says cyberbullying. I wonder if we could add something here. It says like cyberbullying, whether it occurs inside or outside of school. If
We have
it's
that under the-
corrected,
We have that under the bullying policy though.
do we
Oh, yeah. Yes,
cyberbullying in
absolutely.
or out? If
Yeah,
it's directed to
everywhere that you can.
Okay, all right. All right.
All right, so we're gonna move that forward to the board and then we have finished. Is there any public comment? Great, so we just need a motion to adjourn at 7:31. We
So
did.
moved.
Yay.
I'll second.